Hey, Solo Dice here, and today I'm making a list of some of my favorite comics of 2017. Now, I understand everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and this list is only compiled in my opinion. Let's get straight into it. In May of 2016, DC released DC Rebirth, written by Geoff Johns. This was the first book to spark the DC Rebirth comics, and it started with a bang. It showed Batman at the end holding the now famous Watchmen button. This was a huge deal considering the fact that DC Universe never really has interacted with the Watchmen characters before. Skip forward to June of 2017, and Batman number 21 by Tom King, and the story from DC Rebirth continues. The story is called The Button, and I put it on this list because of how well it is written, and it's such a good prelude to the big event coming, Doomsday Clock by Geoff Johns. The four-part story is written through Tom King's Batman Rebirth and Joshua Williamson's Flash's Rebirth. I am personally a fan of both of these characters, and seeing them interact and trying to figure out what the Button really is was fantastic and really well written. Many mysteries were going during Rebirth at this time period, such as who is Mr. Oz, how will the Watchmen characters be introduced, and what is going to happen in Doomsday Clock. The Button does a good job of touching on a few subjects people are trying to find answers to, while leaving room to be hyped for Doomsday Clock. If you like DC and or Watchmen, I would recommend reading this story. Tom King has been the reins of Batman throughout DC Rebirth. I've been following along since number 1, and have enjoyed his run very much. But there is one story in particular that really takes the cake for his take on Batman. The War of Jokes and Riddles came out in the summer of 2017. Before the story started, Batman proposed to Catwoman, and Batman told her he needed to tell her the story of the War of Jokes and Riddles before she gave him an answer. It takes place before the events of DC Rebirth, where Batman is fairly new to being Batman, such as in Year 1. Joker and the Riddler are at a war, and Batman is caught in the middle of it. Death count is rising each day. Batman seems to not have control of what is happening. He considers the War of Jokes and Riddles to be his biggest failure, and throughout the story you can see why he would think that. Pretty much every single big character in Batman's Roguelike Gully has taken a side of either the Joker or the Riddler. The fights are brutal, Batman is in despair, and the story is well told. This is one of the best stories of 2017, and if you have not read it, do yourself a favor and pick this one up. In 2015, Marvel released a solo series for Darth Vader by Kieron Gillen, which was excellent. In 2017, they did another solo series for Darth Vader, but this time it follows him after the events of Revenge of the Sith. It is written by Charles Soule, and he does a masterful job of capturing Vader's early years and his transition to the dark side. He is still gripping with the loss of Padme, and is shown through his actions during the story. The Empire is gaining more and more support, and the Jedi are becoming hated war criminals more and more. Understanding Vader and his emotions in the early years of the Empire is something I have wanted to see in comics for a very long time, and Marvel has done such a good job with this story. Darth Vader is a comic for people who are die-hard Star Wars fans, or someone who might just like Star Wars enough to give it a chance. Marvel has killed it when it comes to Star Wars comics. In 2017, they released such titles as Darth Maul and Mace Windu. I would recommend checking out any of Marvel Star Wars comics, but Darth Vader stood out the most for me this year. I know Tom King has been on this list a lot already, but in 2017 he has killed it. DC Rebirth in general has been good overall, and I recommend reading almost any of the titles under Rebirth. One title by Tom King that I cannot recommend enough is Mr. Miracle. Scott Free is back, and in such a good way. The art by Mitch Gerads is phenomenal and really is well deserved to this fantastic story. With the death of Jack Kirby, his beloved character is really brought justice through the visionary work of Tom King. He brings new Genesis much needed flavor with characters such as High Master, Orion, Light Ray, and even Granny Goodness. You can get attached to Scott and Big Barda through this story, and Tom King does such a good job with putting their romance and struggles onto page. You can see a personal level with Scott and his connection to New Genesis and Apocalypse. The stakes are high when Scott is sentenced to death, and the emotional roller coaster that follows is amazing. Do yourself a favor and pick this book up if you haven't already. Rick Remender is one of my favorite writers in all of comics. The story Seven to Eternity is one of his newer comics starting with number 1 in 2016. The first half of it finished in 2016, and the second half started back up in 2017. The story itself is very well written, and the universe that Rick Remender has made under Image Comics is something to marvel at. The characters are well driven, and the power that each one has is very interesting. The Mud King is one of my new favorite villains I have in comics, and his connection with Adam deepens in return of the story. The God of Whispers really is well deserving of that name with the Mud King. With Adam hearing what he has to offer, the story changes and the characters develop more. Rick Remender's style of storytelling is very unique and is shown off well within this story. Stories such as Fear Agent, Dead Class, and Tokyo Ghost are great examples of his masterful writing. This fantasy universe created by Rick Remender is huge, and I cannot wait to see what comes more of this story. The art is very detailed and brings the new world to life in unexpected and brilliant ways. All I can say is pick up this book, you won't regret it. This list may seem more like DC Comics than anything, but in my opinion, DC has done a phenomenal job this year with Rebirth. One event that is shaping the DC universe as we know it is Metal. Metal is written by Scott Snyder and art is done masterfully by Greg Capullo. The multiverse itself is thrown on its back when the Dark Multiverse is discovered by Batman. The evil within the Dark Multiverse is insane and is shown so well throughout this series. I am covering Metal as a whole considering there are many tie-ins and one-shots attached to this event. In Metal, Batman from different Earths within the Dark Multiverse have become evil, and some have gained powers and are reflections of characters such as Green Lantern and the Flash. The Batman who laughs is the main villain on this story, and Man of Steel great villain. He gathers all the evil Batman and sets them loose on Earth. Each one is an evil Batman get their own one-shot, and it shows how brutal Metal really is. Scott Snyder implements stories and ideas throughout his run of New 52 Batman. It all comes together in Metal, and the stakes have never been higher. With characters like Dream, Snyder has taken the multiverse into new directions and are done so well. I cannot wait to see the finale of this story. Make sure you catch up on it. I cannot have a 2017 comic list without bringing up maybe the most hyped story of 2017. That story being Doomsday Clock, written by Geoff Johns and art by Gary Frank. Watchmen by Alan Moore is one of the best stories in all of comics. The characters of Watchmen are loved by many, and since Alan Moore is not writing this story, I could not be happier that Geoff Johns has taken it. The story itself is only 2 issues in, out of 12, so there isn't too much to say right now. Ever since the panel of DC Rebirth where Batman is holding the Watchmen button, people have had so many questions regarding what is going on with the DC Universe's connection to Watchmen. Characters you love such as Batman, Superman, Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach, and many more are all key parts of Doomsday Clock. Even though the story has just begun, I cannot wait to see where this goes. I urge you to pick this story up.